Well, hello, my dear friends, and welcome to the brand new episode of Sound of Breaking Glass. We're starting in January with a slightly different theme, a slightly different topic from perhaps what you are used to seeing. And I have a very special guest with me. We've changed the location this time. We are filming in Bulgaria, in Sofia. And my guest today is Elitsa Velikova. She is a psychologist, an art therapist, the founder and director of the Arts and Therapy Institute in Sofia, Bulgaria. And she is internationally recognized for her work in therapeutic methods that combine psychology and creative expression. Over 2 decades, she has established herself as an expert in family constellations, expressive arts therapy, and primal therapy, which, for those who don't know, is the healing of the inner child. And I think we all have a lot of work to do. And we talk about that a lot on this show. Her workshops, trainings, and therapeutic groups explore the intersection of creative work and psychological healing, and she has presented her work in various countries across Europe, Asia, and the America. And this month, in January, she will be joining us in London to lead two dedicated family constellation workshops, Roots and Wings and Orders of Success. And if you are interested, stay tuned. We'll touch on that in the show and you can find out how you can join. But a very warm welcome to Lisa. Hello, so nice to see you.
Thank you, Christy, for this invitation. So nice to see you here too.
Likewise. Well, it's always a little bit, we were talking about that in the beginning of the show, switching from Bulgarian into English. For those of who don't know us, we're both Bulgarian. We connected earlier in the year at a very exciting, for me, first experience of arts therapy and your methodology at an event in Barcelona, which was quite a I think I've talked about this before. I signed up for this thinking that I'm going to just be painting and drawing, and it was just gonna be like a nice little holiday, and I didn't realize until Elisa showed up that it was actually gonna be some deep work. There's no, you don't really like to go stay on the surface, do you? I think with you,
Well,
it's
the great
always
thing about
depth.
expressive arts therapy is that it extracts what you need to look at in a very
Mhm.
delicate way. So while you're painting and while you're drinking cava in Barcelona, a lot of things can happen inside.
Yeah, and I've always shared on the show that this is actually this was the time for me when I reconnected with my talent to write, and I had
That's
forgotten this.
beautiful.
This was something that I carried in me when I was a child, and life happened. I got busy with other things, and all of a sudden, I needed that break in that environment for 1 week to actually say, "Well, that is part of who I am. That's my way of working with clients." Right.
Definitely. And when you create the conditions,
Mm,
you definitely can once again reconnect with something that is already there, but it just doesn't have the space otherwise
mhm.
to show up in your life. So, writing is a very therapeutic tool and very, very much a resource for many people.
Mm. Well, I was actually going to go all the way back to when you started because you are a trained psychologist, you studied psychology. And I mentioned at the beginning when we were chatting behind camera that a lot of the guests that come on the show, they've changed their careers, they've switched lanes, they've probably started something on the side which became a full-time job. But you have always been dedicated to psychology. So how did I think for me, it's interesting to see an example of somebody who knew exactly from the outset where they were going, and it sounds like you're still very much dedicated, even though you've added new perhaps modalities and ways to work with people.
I would say that it found me.
Uh huh.
Because in the beginning, when I just graduated high school, I wanted to study Japanese literature and Japanese language. So I started to go to university courses about that. And then, of course, at some point, there was an invitation for me to go to a seminar. I was taking a journalist course, so I had to write an article, and I went to a place to write an article about a guy who was coming to do breath work. That was in 1999. So breath work was nothing that was heard of
Mm-hmm.
here. And so it was an American guy, and I was not familiar with the work itself either. So the moment I walked into the room and I saw this guy, something got very touched in me about the appearance. And I got very attracted to the way this person works, to the breath work itself, and mostly to the topic of your own depths. somehow I got drawn into pursuing that type of work, self investigation.
Mhm.
And then from there, of course, I wanted to study more. And so I went to the UK. I graduated, my bachelor's was in London. And then I started to pursue a career in art therapy in the States. I would still want to go there to study if I start from the beginning. But
Mhm.
at that time, they did not give me a visa. Being from Eastern Europe, that was hard.
Mhm.
And I would say that what turned out to be a curse became a blessing,
Mhm.
because actually after that, I went to Switzerland and I studied expressive arts therapy there.
Mhm.
So, long story short,
Yeah.
it found me. I never had a question once I started to work on myself.
And did you know from the outset it was arts therapy specifically, not just psychology, or is that something that became evident as you started working with people?
This is how it happened. I studied in the UK. I could not really feel that I'm equipped. After graduating 4 years, you cannot really know anything unless you have a life experience and unless you have a very, very good practice with self therapy.
Mhm.
If you have not been in therapy, you cannot be a good therapist. And I'm saying that with full responsibility, because
Mhm.
actually a lot of people know a lot of stuff, but they don't know themselves. And then you cannot really help. So I came back to Bulgaria. I started to work with children and with parents, trying to be a psychologist to them, which was absolutely futile, because actually with children, you cannot sit and analyze. You cannot really, I mean, you talk, but everything
Mhm.
happens through play, everything happens through creativity, art. And then suddenly I realized that I don't have to be the founder of the electricity. It's already there. So what I mean is that
Mm.
I was trying to combine my knowledge with art, and then I said, but probably there is a science related to that. In Bulgaria, in those years, that was 2008, there was absolutely nothing about art therapy. It did not exist.
Mm.
So I found a program. That was the program in Switzerland, since I wasn't admitted in the US. And then in Switzerland, I studied for 3 years expressive arts. When I came back, we started a program also in the New Bulgarian University. And that was
Mhm.
a new way to work with children and parents. Nowadays, I think it's so spread out, and often misunderstood,
Mhm.
because many people think that painting and drinking wine, what we did in Barcelona, is art therapy, which is not.
Sip and what is it called? Sip and paint or something like
Something like
this.
that. It's not really. It's wonderful. I recommend it. It's fantastic, but it is not art therapy.
So what is art therapy then? And I love how you mentioned also something in the beginning about combining two passions, two things that you like, psychology and arts. And I think it was similar for many of my guests. And I always encourage everyone to, if they're building a business or starting something that they want to create themselves, to think about those connecting those dots, those seemingly, especially at the time when you were starting out, disciplines that perhaps to the outside
Yeah.
observer don't have much in common, but then somehow because of your interest, they not only make sense, but actually make you better at each of them. The sum of the parts is somehow greater than the individual.
I think everybody will be very successful if they combine
Mm,
what they love with good skills.
mm,
So if you have a passion for something and you want to do it as a service to others, follow that passion. You will always succeed. But at the same time, gather all the knowledge that you need in this area and work on yourself, and be skillful as much as you can and improve every time, because then you're also making others improve in the
mhm.
same way.
What's the part about being misunderstood? What are people? I think I've seen those memes online. What my parents think I do, what my clients think I do, and what I actually do. So, what do people assume arts therapy is, and
Yeah, coming
how is
back
that
to your
different? Yeah.
question, art therapy is the use of any type of art
Hmm.
for therapeutic purposes, which means that only a skilled professional can do it. So, this is one misconception, because actually it's a therapy. It's art by itself can be healing, but it is a side effect, or it's just the nature of art. And that's why it's so good to use it in every possible way in our life. But to use it as a form of therapy, you need to have the setup, you need to have the direction. There is a certain architecture of a session that you follow when you're working with the arts. So I would say there are many, many different variations of how you can approach a topic. It's always through the arts, either visually or with clay, or you can use writing, or you can use theater, storytelling, anything that is a form of art. And sometimes it also happens just by play. But at the same time, you need to adjust to what the requirements of the person are.
Yeah, and I think that's what people often misinterpret because you can have
Exactly.
a connection with the arts. You can, and I do a lot of work with art, but I'm not a therapist. And I suppose if you are going for arts therapy, this is the reminder: do you use a qualified specialist or a
Definitely.
therapist?
I
Yeah.
think it's really it's important because actually it's wonderful, but it's not an entertainment.
Mm,
It can be very mm, enjoyable while you're doing art therapy,
hmm
but it's not necessary. Sometimes there are a lot of topics that come up, especially if you're dealing with topics of grief or loss or abuse, and
hmm
difficult things that are currently happening either in the past or in the present. So you need to have a skilled professional, and then art is just one of the doors through
hmm
which you enter into the topic.
What about family constellations? Because that is the other modality that you're very well known for. And I know that you've been working with family constellations way before it became very trendy and popular. And I think these days, information travels so far. I know that there are some people who've never heard of it, and they probably think it's something to do with your family,
Yeah.
which maybe is part of the answer. But perhaps for those who've never heard, can we just explain what family constellations are and how that became part of your practice?
That is my other child, I would say. So basically, my two approaches in therapy are either art therapy or family constellation. And the family constellation obviously has to do with family, but it's about the family history, what happened before you. If there is a topic that you're dealing with, sometimes it is not only located in your life right now. It is not just out of your personality or how you were raised. This type of method investigates if there is any type of connection between you and your ancestors and what happened to them and the hidden loyalties that you might carry in relation to the events that happened much before you.
Mhm,
Because it is, it's so popular now to talk about epigenetics and what you inherit, and it's the emotional inheritance that really stays 2, 3, up to 5 or 6 generations, depending on what happened. There is
mhm,
research, a lot of things that can now be traced back to events that happened much before us. And sometimes we don't even know that they happened. We can discover them through the prism of family constellation and through a lot of observations. The founder of that method, Bert Hellinger, actually discovers a lot of orders. We call them orders, but they are just observations of common things that affect the family and that can lead either to a good flow of abundance, love, health, or of course, it can lead to some distortions.
mm.
So the observance of these orders support you, and if you know them, or if you have an idea of how you can put the relationships in your family in that order, then you can create more balance, love, abundance, and flow
So
in your life today.
is that a bit like the arts therapy? You do need some dedicated practice to get the benefits, or can you go to one facilitated session, let's say with you or with a different qualified professional, and still get some benefits even from doing that one as a one-off, or is it something that needs a bit more of a immersion?
Mm, the nature, the way that this method works is that basically you are doing it in a group.
hmm
So you have a group of people that come on a random basis, and the person that is putting a topic usually chooses representatives, again randomly, from the audience. It is never random. It is most probably, if you're chosen to represent somebody, you don't know anything about this person. But at the same time, when this person is chosen, you probably will discover that you have something to do with the person that you're representing, or with the story, or you have a similar story in your own family. So this is a very particular way of synchronicities that happen while you're doing a constellation. Basically, everything that happens from the moment you begin a constellation until it ends is a type, a form of mystery, but at the same time, it has a very real effect. So it's a mystery with real effects. Why I'm saying it's a mystery, there is a lot of explanation about this method. If you represent somebody, you start to feel as if you're this person. How does it happen? You start to have an inner feeling, emotion, or it can be a word or a sentence or something that you feel like an impulse. You want to move, your eyes go and look somewhere. If you just follow those impulses without analyzing, without thinking, are they right or not, then you are just in a happening, a space where some things are by themselves happening and they're leading the constellation into a certain direction. Of course, with the experience, the facilitator can tell some sentences, some rituals, some directions of what is going on, and explaining, of course, the dynamic and how it relates to the problem of the person. So it is a visual picture. You're staying outside if you're the client, and you're seeing the representatives of your family or pieces of your family story enacted. And they're not roles, they're feelings that are represented outside. So the part that is vulnerable to critique is this one, where how do you feel if you're a representative? So I always tell to people, you need to come and see, be a representative, and you won't have any more questions.
Mm.
Because even if you don't feel nothing, feeling nothing is a feeling. So basically, you get into the role or the energy just because you're related, connected. It's in quantum physics, it is called the field. So how do birds in a flock go together without arranging between themselves the movement? They're so fast. They have an instinct, or they have a flow that brings them into certain direction.
Yeah.
So we go into that flow, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been on the other side, on the receiving end, and I quite enjoyed it. And I suppose for me, it's always been a challenge of, oh, how do I know what to say? Is it am I getting my own emotions and thoughts mixed up in the process? But as you say, you do have to experience it to understand it. And I think at least these days we know people are so much more open than they were 10, even 5 years ago, to actually talking about energy. I'm sure when I was starting out, we were talking about my experience when I moved to London 18 years ago. If I had mentioned the word energy, everyone would have thought I've
Oh,
completely lost it. Or feeling things that are not logical, and I think these days people are getting a bit fed up with having to explain everything and put it into words, and maybe, at least in my observation, becoming a bit more open collectively to working in that way.
oh, definitely. This method became so popular, and people like Gwyneth Paltrow, and
All the
she did it a
celebrities,
lot, and
yeah.
it's now in Hollywood, and there is always this. Everybody can relate to that method. That's why
Mm,
it is so common, and it's also not only about the family history. We all belong to some history, and at the same time, we these laws or orders that we call them, they're not pointing only to the family, they're pointing to universal set up, the approach to life, that if you start to realize and maybe implement in your life, somehow obstacles are removed. It's not a magical or instant process. It's a build up, but the orders are so simple. Basically, they're based on observations of the tribes, the ones that Hellinger used to work with, Zulu tribes, and then of course adapted to our situations in the families.
because you mentioned orders,
Mm.
I want to remind our listeners and viewers that we have two very exciting opportunities for you if you wanted to experience family constellations. Perhaps you've worked with them before, perhaps this is new. To actually join us for two events that we'll be hosting in London in January. The first one is on the Friday evening on the 23rd of January, and that's Roots and Wings. And the second one is on the 25th of January. It's a Sunday afternoon, again, some cozy downtime to explore one of these orders that you mentioned, the orders of success, or in other words, what is behind our ability or lack of abundance, wealth, flow, as you described it. So how was the, because I know you've done similar practices before, you've been doing this for many years, Roots and Wings, what does that mean to you? And how can one use that framework to perhaps work on things that they haven't consciously thought about?
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Mm.
If basically for many people, roots are your base, your ancestors, where you come from, your history, what you stand on, and it's your strength. But at the same time, it can be something that holds you down. And the wings, in order to spread your wings or be free or um, do something different or change your life, that is all the metaphors that come with wings, or follow your dreams. You need to feel the roots so that you can have the strength, but then do something different. So basically, in this workshop, in a very short period of time, we try to see what holds us back. Is there anything that we need to acknowledge, heal, let go of from the past so that we can make a change, make a move? And every change comes with a certain price. And the price, you can pay it gladly if you are in peace with what happened in the past, because the connection that you have with your ancestors can never be lost. Usually we do compromises, or we stay loyal consciously or unconsciously because we don't want to lose our place. We want to belong. And if you do something different, if you change something, then you are in this state where you might feel, oh, I'm losing my belonging. I'm more by myself because everybody else before me was unhappy. Now, how can I be happy? So basically, it's about daring to stay a little bit more on your own, and at the same time, knowing that these people will always be with you. You will always have your place. So, this is the strength that you can gain from your roots, take the resources and carry them into doing whatever you want in your life. So, it's about reconciliation, acknowledging, taking resources, and also letting go. And maybe a little bit of support we will give to how to follow our dreams, how to be in alignment with ourselves, even if that means standing a little bit more on our own.
That's very topical, especially as we start the new year and there's so much
True.
pressure for what the new year is going to look like. How is it going to go? What are my goals? What are my visions? And I always encourage everyone to maybe take a step back and at least give themselves January. I feel like we always rush a lot in January. I feel like my new year always starts a little bit later. I'm on a different schedule. But what about abundance and flow? Because again, we were talking about it, and there's so many, especially where we grew up, misconceptions or perhaps patterns, beliefs about how all the hardship that comes with having money. And I think often we don't even realize that we were raised in this way. And I think that's part of what you're
Yeah.
addressing.
Remember, we had a discussion whether we should present a topic about relationships or success, because
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is the second most important topic. And it's not only about abundance, it's about how safe, secure, and trusting you feel in your life. Because abundance is just a description of an inner state. It's not about your bank account or financial security. It's how much you feel generosity of existence in your life, how much you feel trusting that there is everything that you need in your life for you. It's about your grounding, and it's the orders of success are helping you to trace back if there are any obstacles to success coming from the history of your family, and that can be difficult events or traumas that happened in the past, bankruptcy. Many people were in war, and there is a lot of situations with early deaths or limitations, sometimes political pursuits, and whatever they happen. A lot of events usually happen in families that might affect how your abundance is today. So we look at some of the events or what might be affecting you. Then we do a little bit of ritual or practices about healing those so that you can start to have the ground from where you feel, okay, now I have everything that I need and I have enough, which is true. Sometimes our um, blockage to success can come from our relationship to our mother. One of my teachers was saying that if you're rejecting your mother or if you have a lot of complaints about her, then you probably complain a lot about life. So, how, if you are not able to receive from her, how can you receive from life? So, these kind of uh, pieces of information can very much make sense to the people that will come to the workshop. We do practices with those so that you can feel sometimes a release or a healing or restructuring
Yeah.
inside. And then from there, you build something new, as you said, for the new year. I always recommend the new year should start like the Chinese do it in
Uh-huh.
February.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've all felt it. Everyone who works with, I don't know, somatics, energy, I think we will all feel that 1st of January is a nice date in the calendar, but that's pretty much where it ends if you're not tuned into the energy to
Low energy day because of all the alcohol.
oh, and the yeah, well, it doesn't have to be, but for many people it is the reality. But I suppose back to the events, it's I like that we're doing this in London, and part of the inspiration was that so many people, it's such a melting pot. People
Yeah,
come and go. It's a very transient place. The energies of the city is such. And I think so many people that will come to this event, they are from somewhere, maybe other parts of the country, maybe other parts of Europe, other parts of the world. And whenever you have traveled away from where your ancestors are, where your roots are, and that's the reality that we live in today, I think those are the people, me included, that need that support the most because it's always, I think, a different experience when you live away from home for whatever
yeah,
reason.
definitely. It's also your identity. It's part of your identity. And if you somehow have drifted away from that, it's very normal. It's a natural way because you have immigrated, and then you need implement the new into who you were until that point. But at the same time, you need to carry that with a certain pride. And what I mean by that is that you need to stand for who you are from where you come, and your ancestors then are support for you. Because I remember, especially coming from Eastern Europe, there was a lot of sometimes shame about your identity. And
Oh yeah, I
um,
felt that myself. I
def-
was hiding where I was from, and even was changed my name. I wanted to jump in because I think that was such a big. I was making myself small in so many ways, and I only realized that later after
exactly.
alcohol therapy, even though maybe it wasn't as such, but labeled as such, but a lot of inner work to
Yeah.
realize why that was not very helpful.
Definitely, and of course, if you can mask it in a very good way. Um, at the same time, if you feel deficiency about your place of origin, um, if you feel deficient about that, it means that somehow you will think of yourself less and you will receive or attract less in your life. So that's why it's really important that you come to peace with the long path that you have come to be here today. And behind you, there are so many other people that stand, and they had so many different challenges, your parents, your grandparents, and so many events happen so that today you can be here, which we need to feel grateful about and hold it like a crown, and really feel proud with who we are and what we have accomplished. From here, this is a good ground. You can build anything and you can be successful because you know that you have enough. Even if your mother didn't want you or didn't take the best care of you, or your parents separated or whatever, you're here today, which means that you have every possibility to be happy.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I like that as a modality, because we don't need to necessarily know or explain in words
Yeah.
what happened. We don't. Who knows what happened 7 generations ago, even one. Sometimes we
Yeah.
don't know, and you don't have to dig into the past with blaming this or that person for giving you that burden. It's much more about, as you said, just making peace and moving on. But we're nearing the end of our conversation. But one question I really wanted to ask, because we've been talking about roots, wings, people moving, ancestral heritage. You've traveled you travel all the time. I don't think, in fact, I know anybody else that travels as much around the world to do workshops, to facilitate groups. And you've made some interesting observations. One of the most interesting places that I've heard you speak about is China, and some of the collective burdens they have there as a society. Then you obviously work a lot with people here in Bulgaria and Europe. Have you got any observations on perhaps what we all have in common despite these differences, and perhaps things that you've observed from working in those different countries of how perhaps you can adapt or maybe evolve some of the methods to meet people where they are?
Yeah. Of course, every method evolves together with my own consciousness, and I hope it does. But also, of course, the life experience helps me a lot by meeting many people and their life stories. We're not so different from each other. We all suffer in love. We all suffer from political pressure, from poverty, from disease. But of course, the cultural setup is really important, and the history of each country. In China, it's amazing to see how much violence and um, how much aggression there is still in families, and it has a long-term consequences today. That's why people are so traumatized. They carry the collective trauma. There are so many things that happen there. I can't even start. It's a different podcast that we need to do about
Yeah.
that. Really,
Mm.
the history of that country is amazing. But the last time I was there, we did something really so touching, because I saw that people are starting to want to remember the old spirit of China. It is so annihilated. I think outside of China, we know much more about that country than the people who are there, because the history is erased systematically. And then this time in one of the constellations, we brought the old spirit of China there. That was so touching. I think everybody got touched to a place where they recognize something deep that comes with so many resources, the China that we all know. And it's not a romantic idea about China, it is the spirit. So sometimes constellations bring us to the essence of things. And in every constellation, you can touch on an essence. In this case, we touched on the essence of the country, but you can connect with the essence of your family heart. And always in constellations, you connect with love. So love is experienced everywhere in the world. That is the common thing.
Oh, that's a beautiful place to perhaps end the conversation. I think that's one of the things with you. You never stay on the surface with Elisa. You always go in great depth. And the reality is there's so many resources on the Arts Therapy Institute's website in English as well. So if anyone was intrigued and wanted to find out more about family constellations, that is a beautiful source, qualified professional and experienced professional here talking about these therapists. There's so much misunderstanding. So please, when you get your information, make sure that you get it from the right source. And by all means, again, a warm invitation to join us for those two events that we are hosting in January. Maybe just any closing remarks. I always like to ask if anyone's just starting, perhaps completely new to the field, just one or two guidances or directions. How can they start if they say, oh, this sounds interesting, but I'm really not sure where to start with family constellations or arts therapy?
I understand. So, for those who have any topic and don't have an idea how to approach it, I think it's very much important to try different approaches so that you can find what is yours. I don't think it's about the approach, it's about the connection and the alchemical relationship that happens between you and the person that you're working with. It's a very specific and very personal connection between a therapist and a client. We call it a client, but it's actually you're crossing your life paths. So the number one requirement for me is trust. And of course, you need to research the person that you're working with and have a good recommendation at least. At the same time, you know it instantly. It's if whether you have the click or not. So follow your click, I would say,
As I
not the method.
Yes, it's a bit like your hairdresser. It takes a while to find the right one, but once you do, you probably want to stick around.
I
Thank
like
you
that.
so much for joining me today. I very much look forward to having you in London very, very shortly. And for everyone who is watching or listening, you can find the links in the show notes or in the comments on YouTube. We thank you again for being with us. We have I hope you have a fantastic start of the new year, and I look forward to seeing you and speaking with you very, very soon.